This poor cleaning lady covers a millionaire's mouth in the car. Seconds later, he discovers the reason and is shocked. Comment giving a rating from 0 to 10 for my story. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The 30-year-old woman scrubbed the back seat of the imported vehicle in circular motions, trying to remove a stubborn stain from the leather. The damp cloth left streaks of foam as she stretched to reach the farthest corner. Her knees ached against the soft leather of the seats, but she needed to finish the job before anyone noticed she was taking too long. The underground garage of the mansion was silent, only the echo of her own movements reverberating off the concrete walls. That's when she heard hurried footsteps approaching. Before she could react, the driver's side door flew open. The 30-year-old man got into the vehicle without looking back, his fingers already dialing a number on his phone as he turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared. The woman felt her entire body freeze with fear. She was crouched in the back seat, invisible to him through the tinted glass that separated the compartments. Her heart was beating so loudly that it seemed impossible he couldn't hear it. The car started to move. She held her breath, her hands clenching the cleaning cloth until her knuckles turned white. Through the window, she saw the garage lights receding. The vehicle accelerated up the exit ramp. The man was on the phone, talking about a deal he needed to close in an hour, his voice firm and decisive. The woman closed her eyes tightly, trying to decide what to do. If she revealed her presence now, he might think it was a robbery attempt. He could call security. She would lose her job. She would lose the only source of income she had to care for her daughter. The streets flashed past the window. The car weaved through the traffic of the big city with agility. The woman remained motionless, her body huddled against the seat. It was then that she noticed something strange. The man brought his hand to his forehead, shaking his head from side to side. His voice on the phone slurred for a second. He blinked several times, as if trying to focus his vision. The fingers holding the steering wheel seemed less firm. The memory came back like a punch. A few hours earlier, she was cleaning the hallway on the second floor when she heard raised voices coming from the master bedroom. The door was ajar. She didn't want to listen, but the words were too loud to ignore. The businessman's wife was yelling about documents, about changes to the will, about years of marriage thrown away. The woman continued wiping the banister, pretending not to hear anything. But then she saw something that made her stomach churn. The wife came down the stairs wearing thin rubber gloves, carrying a bottle of mineral water. Her movements were calculated, precise. She went into the kitchen, and the woman saw through the glass door when she opened the bottle and poured something from a small vial inside. The wife closed the bottle again, shook the liquid carefully, and put everything in a cooler bag. Then she removed the gloves and hid them in her dress pocket. Her eyes met the woman's for a split second, a cold, threatening look. The woman quickly lowered her head and continued cleaning, her hands trembling. Now, inside the moving car, she saw the man bring the bottle to his lips. The same bottle that had been placed in the car's cup holder that morning. He took a long sip as he turned sharply to the left. His head swayed again. His eyes were blinking uncontrollably. The car swerved dangerously between lanes on the highway. The woman saw the intersection approaching. The light was red, but the car wasn't slowing down. Other vehicles were crossing in front. A truck was coming from the right. The man didn't seem to see any of it. His reflexes were slow, confused. His hand slipped off the steering wheel for an instant. Without thinking, the woman lunged forward. Her hand covered the man's mouth forcefully, the other pulling his arm. He stepped on the brake instinctively, startled by the unexpected touch. The car skidded, the tires screeching on the asphalt. It stopped inches from the intersection. The truck roared past. In front of them, the silence that followed was deafening. The man turned slowly. His wide eyes met hers. For a second, neither of them moved. Then he exploded. His hands grabbed her wrists tightly, pulling her away. The words came out in furious bursts. Who was she? How had she gotten in there? What did she think she was doing? He was already reaching for the phone to call security, accusing her of trespassing, of attempted robbery. The woman tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Tears streamed down her face. She pointed with a trembling finger towards the passenger seat, where the water bottle rested innocently. She managed to push the words out between sobs. She saw when the wife put something in the drink. She was cleaning the hallway. She heard the argument about the will. She saw the gloves, the vial, everything. The man turned pale. His hand released the phone, which fell onto the seat with a thud. He looked at the bottle, then at her, then at the bottle again. He asked in a hoarse voice how she could be sure. The woman told him everything she had seen and heard. Every detail etched in her mind by fear. She confessed that she hadn't spoken up before because she needed the job, because she had a 4-year-old daughter who depended on her, because no one would believe a simple maid against the word of a powerful businessman's wife. The man ran a hand over his face. He looked around as if he were seeing the world for the first time. The symptoms he was feeling made sense now, the dizziness, the blurred vision, the slow reflexes. He picked up the bottle carefully, as if it were a bomb about to explode. He asked her not to tell anyone anything. Not yet. He needed to be sure before he acted. He needed proof. The car returned to the mansion through a side entrance. The woman got out quickly and returned to work, her legs still trembling. The man went up to his study carrying the bottle. In the following days, she continued cleaning the same rooms as always, but she felt the weight of a secret that threatened to suffocate her. The businessman's wife watched her with narrowed eyes whenever they passed each other in the hallways. Something had changed. The air in the house was heavy, filled with a tension that made each breath seem difficult. The woman started having nightmares. She dreamed that she lost her job, that her daughter got worse, that she couldn't afford the medication. She woke up sweating in the middle of the night, her heart racing. During the day, she kept her head down and worked in silence. But she knew that something terrible was about to happen. She could feel it in the shadows that seemed to lengthen in the corners of the mansion, in the way the wife held her teacups too tightly, in the glances the businessman gave the woman when he thought no one was watching. A week after the incident in the car, the man received a manila envelope in his study. Inside, there was a detailed report on the contents of the water bottle. The substances found there were known to cause deep drowsiness, loss of motor coordination, and in larger doses while driving a vehicle at high speed, irreversible consequences. The paper trembled in his hands as he read. The woman he had shared 10 years of his life with had tried to kill him. The businessman locked himself in his study for 3 days. The woman continued cleaning the hallways, but now she noticed things that had previously gone unnoticed. The wife received frequent phone calls and always stepped away to answer, her voice low and tense. One afternoon, while cleaning the living room, the woman saw through the window when a car stopped in front of the mansion. An elegant man got out and was greeted by the wife with a hug that lasted too long to be just friendly. The woman pretended not to see anything, but her heart raced when she recognized the visitor. It was the businessman's partner, the one who appeared in the framed photos in the study, smiling next to her boss at openings and events. The two entered the mansion talking quietly. The wife led the man to the library on the 2nd floor. The woman discreetly went upstairs to clean the nearby bathroom. She didn't want to listen, but the voices carried through the wooden door. They argued about documents, about percentages of ownership in the company, about how much longer they would have to wait. The partner seemed impatient. He said the plan had failed and that they needed a new approach. The wife calmed him down, her voice soft but determined. She talked about other possibilities, about accidents that could seem natural, about the fortune they would divide as soon as everything was settled. The woman felt a chill run down her spine. She leaned against the hallway wall, the cleaning cloth falling from her trembling hands. When the partner left, the wife came down the stairs with a serene expression on her face. She passed the woman without saying a word, but her eyes contained a coldness that made the maid shrink. That night, the woman barely slept. She arrived home and hugged her daughter tightly, the 4-year-old girl complaining that her mother was squeezing too hard. The child was paler than normal, her breathing a little labored. The woman prepared the medicine and sat on the bed next to her daughter until she fell asleep. She looked around the small room they called home. The peeling walls, the ceiling stained by moisture, the window that didn't close properly. Everything was so fragile, so precarious. A single mistake, and they would lose even that. The next morning, the businessman called the woman to his study. She climbed the stairs with wobbly legs, fearing what was to come. When she entered, she found him sitting behind the mahogany desk, his eyes red with fatigue. There were papers scattered everywhere, empty coffee cups piled up in the corner. He asked her to close the door and tell him again everything she had seen and heard, every detail, no matter how small. The woman repeated her story, this time including what she had witnessed the day before. The secret meeting between the wife and the partner, the words about new plans. The businessman turned even paler. He got up from his chair and went to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. He remained silent for long minutes. When he finally spoke, his voice was broken. He said that he had hired a private investigator. The findings were devastating. The wife and the partner had been having an affair for over 2 years. They met in a discreet apartment downtown. There were records of suspicious bank transfers, forged documents, plans to take full control of the company. The woman listened in silence, not knowing what to say. The man in front of her, so powerful and admired, seemed to have aged 10 years in a week. He turned to her with tearful eyes. He thanked her for saving his life. He said he didn't know what he would have done if she hadn't been in that car. The woman lowered her head, uncomfortable with the gratitude. She murmured that she had only done what anyone would do. He shook his head. Not everyone would have the courage to act, especially running the risk of losing everything. The businessman asked her to continue working normally, but to be alert to any strange movements. She would be his eyes and ears inside the mansion while he resolved the situation. The woman agreed, although fear consumed her from within. In the following days, the tension in the house became unbearable. The wife began to ask questions about the cleaning routine, about which rooms the woman accessed, about what she saw during her work. Her eyes studied every reaction, every word. One afternoon, the woman was cleaning the kitchen when the wife entered abruptly. She locked the door behind her and leaned against it, her arms crossed. She asked in a cold voice what the maid had told her husband. The woman pretended not to understand, her hands continuing to wash the dishes in the sink. The wife advanced, grabbing her arm forcefully. She repeated the question, this time with obvious anger in her voice. The woman pulled away, her body pressed against the counter. She swore that she hadn't said anything, that she was just doing her job. The wife studied her face for long seconds. Then she released her arm with a shove. She said that if she found out that the woman was lying, she would make sure to destroy her life. She knew influential people. She could guarantee that she would never find a job anywhere again. And as for that sick daughter, it would be a shame if something happened to the child due to lack of proper treatment. The words were a clear threat. The woman felt tears burning her eyes, but she forced herself not to cry. She just nodded in silence. The wife left the kitchen with firm steps, leaving the maid trembling. That night, the businessman confronted the partner. He scheduled an urgent meeting in the company's office, a mirrored building in the financial district. The woman knew this because he called asking her to retrieve some specific documents from his private study in the mansion. When she handed over the papers, she saw that they were financial records, contracts, proof of transfers. The businessman's face was tense, determined. The meeting took place after hours. The businessman placed all the documents on the table and waited for the partner to sit down. Then he began to speak. He presented each piece of evidence meticulously. The secret accounts, the meetings with the wife, the plan to take control of the company. The partner tried to deny it at first, his voice indignant, but as more evidence was presented, his facade began to crumble. Finally, the man lowered his head and confessed. He said that the businessman's wife had approached him 3 years ago when the company was going through a difficult time. She talked about how her husband was changing, becoming more distant, more obsessed with work. The partner, recently divorced and lonely, saw in her a confidant. The closeness turned into something more. When the company began to recover and grow exponentially, the businessman's wealth multiplied. That's when the wife suggested that they could have it all for themselves. It would be easy. An accident, a fatality. No one would suspect. The businessman listened to everything with his hands clenched into fists. When the partner finished, he remained silent for long minutes. Then he spoke with a voice that seemed to come from far away. He said he would dissolve the partnership immediately, that he would take the necessary legal measures, that he never wanted to see that man in front of him again. The partner rose from the chair, staggering, his face as white as a sheet. He tried to say something, but the businessman just pointed to the door. When he got home that night, the businessman found the mansion eerily silent. He went upstairs, calling for his wife. The closet was empty. The jewelry was gone. Important documents that were kept in the bedroom safe were also missing. She had fled, taking everything of value she could carry. The businessman sat on the edge of the bed where he had slept next to that woman for so many years. His hands were shaking. The woman found the businessman sitting on the front steps when she arrived for work the next morning. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair disheveled. He looked like he hadn't slept all night. She hesitated for a moment, unsure whether she should approach. Then she saw the silent tears streaming down his face. Her heart ached. She climbed the steps slowly and sat beside him, maintaining a respectful distance. She didn't say anything. She just sat there, her silent presence offering a comfort that words could not express. The businessman wiped his face with the back of his hand. He apologized for being that way. The woman shook her head, saying that he didn't need to apologize. He looked at her with gratitude and something else that she couldn't identify. He got up slowly and entered the mansion. The woman followed behind, gathering her cleaning supplies. The house seemed bigger now, emptier. The silence echoed through the hallways in an oppressive way. In the following weeks, the businessman's life turned into a chaotic whirlwind. The lawyers worked day and night on the divorce proceedings. The wife had hired a powerful law firm and demanded half of everything. She claimed that she had contributed to building the wealth, that she deserved her fair share. The newspapers began publishing stories about the separation of the couple known in business circles. Speculation about the reasons popped up on social media. The businessman dismissed almost all the employees of the mansion. He could no longer trust anyone. The only one who remained was the woman. She now worked alone in that immense mansion, her footsteps echoing through the empty halls. Sometimes she found him standing in front of the study window, staring into space. Other times she saw him working late into the night, trying to keep the company running amid the personal chaos. One day he called her to talk. He asked about her daughter. The woman felt a lump in her throat when she spoke about the girl. She said that the 4-year-old child had a respiratory condition that required expensive medicines and frequent checkups. She worked at that mansion and in 2 other places to pay for the treatment, but the salary barely covered the expenses. Sometimes she had to choose between buying the medicines or paying the rent. The businessman listened to her carefully. When she finished, he made a proposal. He wanted to pay for the girl's complete treatment. The woman recoiled immediately, her eyes widening. She said that she couldn't accept charity, that wasn't why she had told him about her daughter. He insisted, explaining that it wasn't charity. It was gratitude for her saving his life. If it weren't for her, he would be dead. Medical treatment was the least he could do. The woman fought against the pride that burned in her chest. She thought of her daughter, of those big, frightened eyes when her breathing became difficult, of the nights when the girl coughed until she couldn't sleep anymore, of the times when she herself cried, hidden in the bathroom, feeling helpless. Finally, with tears running down her face, she accepted. The businessman immediately called his personal doctor and scheduled a full checkup for the child. 2 weeks later, when the girl had gone through all the tests and started a new treatment, the improvement was visible. The cough decreased. The pallor gave way to a healthy pink on her cheeks. The child returned to playing and running, without getting tired quickly. When the woman took her daughter for a follow-up visit and the doctor said that the condition was stabilizing, she couldn't hold back the tears. She left the office and called the businessman, her voice choked with emotion as she thanked him. He asked her to come to the mansion. When she arrived, she found him in the garden. Something rare lately. The woman sat on the bench beside him, her daughter running after butterflies among the flowers. The businessman watched the girl with a gentle smile. He commented that it had been a long time since he had seen a child so full of life. The woman followed his gaze, her heart overflowing with gratitude. They sat there in comfortable silence, just watching the girl play. It was then that something began to change between them. The businessman began to notice small details. The way she hummed softly while tidying up the library, how her eyes lit up when she talked about her daughter, the dedication with which she performed each task, even the simplest ones. He began to look for excuses to talk to her. He asked about her day, about how the girl was doing, about her opinions on everyday matters. The woman also noticed changes in herself. Her heart raced when she heard his footsteps approaching. She caught herself fixing her hair before entering a room where she knew he would be. She felt a strange pang in her chest when he talked about the divorce hearings, about how difficult it was to trust someone again. She tried to stifle these feelings, constantly reminding herself of who she was and what her place was in that house. The divorce proceedings dragged on. The wife didn't budge on anything. Her lawyers were aggressive, seeking every possible legal loophole. But then the evidence of the poisoning plot was presented in court. The toxicology reports from the water bottle, the woman's testimony about what she had witnessed. The judge was visibly shaken when he heard the details. The wife's defense tried to claim that it was all a setup, that the maid was being coerced by the businessman. The woman had to appear in court. She sat in the witness chair with sweaty hands. The wife's lawyer bombarded her with aggressive questions. She insinuated that she had an inappropriate relationship with the businessman, that she was lying to benefit him, that she had fabricated the whole story to gain advantages. The woman answered each question in a firm voice, despite the fear she felt. She told exactly what she had seen, without adding or omitting anything. When she stepped down from the witness stand, her legs were trembling. The businessman was waiting for her in the courthouse hallway. He thanked her for her courage. He said he knew how difficult that had been for her. The woman just nodded, still shaken by the experience. That night, she couldn't sleep. She replayed every word she had said, every accusatory look she had received. The verdict came 3 weeks later. The judge considered the evidence of the poisoning plot and ruled in favor of the businessman. The wife would receive only a small percentage of the assets, much less than she demanded. She left the courtroom screaming, promising to appeal the decision. The businessman left through the side door, avoiding the photographers. When he got home, he sat in the empty living room and cried again, not from sadness, but from exhausted relief. The woman was cleaning the kitchen when she heard him. She went to the living room and stood in the doorway, unsure whether she should enter. He saw her and motioned for her to come closer. She sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands nervous in her lap. The businessman talked about how his life had been turned upside down, how everything he thought was solid had turned out to be an illusion, how he felt lost in his own home. The woman listened to everything and then, for the first time, shared her own story. She talked about the girl's father, who had left when he found out about the pregnancy, about how she worked until the last day before giving birth so as not to lose her job, about the nights when she had nothing to eat but pretended to be satisfied so that her daughter would eat her share, about the constant fear of not being enough, of failing the only person who depended completely on her. The businessman listened to her with full attention. When she finished, he said something that surprised her. He said that she was the bravest person he knew, that she had faced adversities that would make most people give up, and yet she continued to fight, that her daughter was lucky to have a mother like that. His words touched something deep inside her. For the first time in years she felt seen, not as the maid, not as the poor thing, but as a person of value. The following days brought a growing closeness between them. They had dinner together in the kitchen, conversations that stretched for hours. He asked about her dreams, about what she would do if money wasn't an issue. She talked about opening a small shop, about giving a better life to her daughter, about simple things that seemed impossible. He shared his own fears about the future, about rebuilding trust. One night, after another conversation that stretched late into the night, the businessman took the woman's hand. She felt an electric current run through her body. His eyes sought hers with an intensity that scared her. He confessed that he had noticed something changing inside him, that when she was around, the house didn't seem so empty, that her smiles made the difficult days seem bearable, that for the first time since the betrayal, he felt able to trust someone again. The woman pulled her hand away, as if she had touched fire. She got up from the sofa, her heart beating unevenly. She said that he was confused, that it was just gratitude for what she had done, that she was the maid, and he, the boss, that was impossible. The businessman also got up, taking a step towards her. He insisted that he knew exactly what he felt, that it wasn't confusion or gratitude, that he had fallen in love with her strength, her kindness, the way she faced the world with courage, even when everything seemed lost. Tears began to stream down the woman's face. She shook her head repeatedly. She talked about the difference between their worlds. He attended dinners in fancy restaurants while she barely had a decent dress. He was photographed by business magazines while she cleaned bathrooms to survive. How could that work? People would laugh at her. They would say that she was a gold digger, that she was using him. And what would happen when he realized that she didn't belong in that world? The businessman tried to argue, but she had already decided. In a firm voice, despite the tears, she resigned. She said that she couldn't continue there, that would only bring suffering to both of them, that he deserved someone of his level, someone who could walk by his side without embarrassing him. Before he could respond, she ran out of the room. She grabbed her belongings and left through the back door. The businessman stood in the middle of the empty living room, listening to the echo of his own footsteps. In the following months, he tried to find her. He called the number he had, but it was disconnected. He went to the address in the employee registration, but found that she had moved. He asked the merchants in the area, but no one knew anything. It was as if she had disappeared. He plunged into work trying to forget, but every corner of the mansion brought memories of her. The room where she hummed, the kitchen where they made coffee together, the garden where they watched her daughter play. The woman had moved to the distant outskirts of the big city. She got a small job in a neighborhood diner. The salary was lower, the hours longer, but she preferred it that way, away from him, away from the temptation to believe in something impossible. Her daughter asked about the kind man who had helped with the medicines. The woman diverted the subject, her heart aching. At night, she cried in silence so that the girl wouldn't hear. 6 months passed. The businessman's life had stabilized superficially. The company continued to grow, his wealth increasing. But he felt hollow inside. He tried dating other women, introduced by well-meaning friends. They were all beautiful, polite, from the same social circle, None made his heart race. None had that sparkle in their eyes when they talked about simple dreams. None was her. It was then that he received a call from the hospital. He recognized the name of the institution immediately. It was where the woman's daughter had been treated. The voice on the phone explained that the girl had been admitted with a severe respiratory crisis. She needed urgent surgery. The mother couldn't afford the costs. They had obtained his contact through the old payment records. They asked if he could help again. The businessman didn't think twice. He grabbed his car keys and drove to the hospital. His heart was beating unevenly throughout the journey. When he arrived in the pediatric ward hallway, he saw her. She was sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall, her face hidden in her hands. Her shoulders trembled with silent sobs. She was wearing the diner uniform, stained and wrinkled. Her hair was tied in a disheveled ponytail. He had never found her so beautiful. She looked up and saw him. For a moment she was paralyzed. Then she broke down. She rose unsteadily, and he caught her before she fell. The woman cried in his arms, all the pain and despair of the last few days coming out in waves. He hugged her tightly, murmuring that he was there, that everything would be okay, that he would take care of everything. She no longer had the strength to refuse. The surgery was scheduled for the next day. The businessman hired the best specialists. He stayed by the woman's side throughout the wait. He held her hand when she trembled. He brought coffee when she couldn't move. When the medical team finally came out of the operating room with positive news, the woman collapsed with relief. The girl had responded well. She would need a few weeks of recovery, but she was out of danger. During the days of hospitalization, the businessman visited every day. He brought toys for the girl, who smiled broadly when she saw him. He talked for hours with the woman while the child slept. Slowly, the barriers she had built began to fall. He talked about how he had tried to find her, about how many times he had picked up the phone to call, only to remember that the number was disconnected, about how the house felt like a mausoleum without her presence. The woman finally confessed that she had also suffered, that she thought about him every day, that she tried to convince herself that she had made the right choice, but her heart insisted on disagreeing. He took her calloused hands in his. He said that he didn't care what other people would think, that she had taught him the true value of things, that next to her he felt whole for the first time in his life, that wealth wasn't in stock investments or accumulated money, but in having someone genuine by his side. When the girl was discharged from the hospital, he took them back to the mansion. The woman hesitated as she passed through the gate. So many memories of that place. So much had happened within those walls. But now it was different. He had prepared a special room for the girl, with cheerful colors and toys, and for her, a space where she could finally rest, not as a maid, but as part of that house. In the following months, they built a new routine. He taught her about the business, discovering that she had an impressive natural intelligence. Her ideas about social responsibility transformed the company. She proposed support programs for employees in vulnerable situations, daycare centers for working mothers, educational assistance. The company not only grew in profit, but gained recognition for its humanized practices. She, in turn, taught him about gratitude, about finding joy in a sunset, in a simple shared meal, in a lazy afternoon in the garden. The girl blossomed in that loving environment. She saw in the businessman a father figure she had never had. He discovered that the best moments of the day were when he came home and found the two of them waiting for him. When they finally decided to take the relationship public, they faced waves of criticism. Magazines published malicious articles. Acquaintances from high society turned their backs, but they stood firm, hands clasped against the world. The woman proved her worth not only as a companion, but as a visionary. Her social initiatives brought positive returns not only in image, but in employee productivity and loyalty. The businessman realized the irony of fate. He had almost lost everything by trusting the wrong people. But that terrible moment in the car, when a humble hand covered his mouth and changed the course of his life, had been the greatest gift. It not only saved his physical life, but rescued his ability to trust, to love, to see value where society only saw class difference. Years later, in an intimate ceremony, he proposed to her. He didn't want ostentation, just the people who really mattered. When she said yes, with tears of happiness, he knew that he had found his place in the world. The girl, now a healthy and radiant child, was the flower girl. The mansion that once echoed empty now overflowed with life, with laughter, with true love. And all because a brave woman, even afraid of losing everything, chose to do what was right. She chose to save a life when she could have remained silent, and in that choice she saved not only a man, but built a future that neither of them ever imagined possible. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment on what you thought of my story, giving it a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.